Hey guys, Raul from Simple Wi-Fi, and in this video we're going to do an in-depth dive on the PiFi repeater. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to set it up, configure, and optimize for the best performance of your PiFi repeater. First, a quick overview of what the PiFi is. The PiFi repeater will allow you to easily transmit signals between two locations, where at the second location you're grabbing the internet from the first location. At the second location, you'll have a router that's connected to the PiFi and the antenna outside, and the router is then retransmitting Wi-Fi for multiple devices. So let's cover what's included. First, we're going to go over the components of the standard Wi-Fi kit. You have options on the website to upgrade for high performance and improved performance, and that basically is just enhancing the signal and the host network. We're going to talk first about everything that goes at the second location. This is the PiFi, the antenna, and your router. So within your standard kit, you have the PiFi, all the necessary power supply for that, 50 feet of Ethernet cable, your panel that gets mounted outside with the PiFi, and the router that goes inside the second location. And this is what's going to be grabbing the signal from the PiFi and the antenna outside via the cable and be rebroadcast inside to multiple devices. All right, so let's follow the signal from the outside in, talking about all the components involved in that order. The first thing we're going to talk about is the panel antenna. This is a 14 dBi USA-made directional panel. And this is where you're going to be doing your physical link to the host network. Behind this is going to sit the PiFi. This is the brains of the operation. This is what's transmitting signal to and from your router at the second location to the host network. To connect to the antenna, we're going to use a coaxial jumper. This jumper is connected to the back of the panel via an included right angle adapter. This helps reduce any kinks and loss in signal from bends and things that can hurt the signal from a coaxial cable, which we know from other videos you never want to kink or bend too strong. This goes connected to the back of the antenna, and this is how your wireless connection is made. Included in all this equipment are the hardware to make your connection. Now, we have two brackets which will get sandwiched between or sandwiched around the pole, and steel rods that'll sandwich the two sides using thumb screws and the included hardware. We have two sets of hardware, a longer stud and a shorter stud. This is just in case you need to use for if you have a fatter pole larger than 1.5 inch diameter. Now, included in every kit is additional hardware in case you wanted to upgrade your antenna to something stronger like our parabolic grid. The parabolic grid does not sandwich around the pole with the PiFi. It will have to sit below, and for that reason the U-bolts will allow for the PiFi to sit under the antenna, and then the pigtail will connect to the top of the grid, which we'll cover in other videos. Now let's talk about what's going on inside. The unit outside is grabbing signal and is feeding it via 50 feet of Ethernet cable down to a PoE. The PoE is what provides power to the unit and transmits data from the router. The PoE is short for Power over Ethernet. Your power injection is happening over the 50-foot cable run along with your data. Now, at the back of this PoE, you have an RJ45 connector, which is an Ethernet port. And this is where the cable from the outside comes into the building. You make your connection there, and there's two LEDs here, which we'll talk about later in the video. To provide power to the unit, we include a power supply that is specific to the PiFi. Now, you also have a power supply for the router. Make sure that you do not mix this as the unit is very sensitive. You make your connection to the power supply for the PiFi like so, and onto your wall. Now, you also have a power supply, like I said, for the router, and that's as simple as plugging it in, and they're both connected to the same outlet on the wall. Doesn't really matter, or a power strip. Now, for internet to pass between your router and onto your devices, you need to plug this into the internet source on your router. This is how data is coming from the second location to the PiFi via 50 feet of Ethernet cable and into your router and onto your wireless devices. As a bonus feature, once you set up your PiFi to communicate with the network at the host side, you have live internet at the end of this jack, which means that you can unplug it from this router and plug it into another router or directly into your laptop or computer for internet access that way as well. Setting up the components of your outdoor system is fairly simple. In this part of the video, we're going to cover how to set up your panel and your PiFi onto a pole. All you're going to need is a set of pliers, and of course your outdoor mounting kit. If you've got the J pole that came with us, you can slide it over the top. If you've got a long pole, you can also marry it together. In this scenario, we're going to cover the most common use case, which is a J pole, which you can slide over the top. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my panel and my right angle connector, and I want to screw it on to the back of the antenna. Later on, this is where the PiFi is going to physically connect to the antenna. Now I'm going to grab one of my brackets and lay it over the top of the studs. In this scenario, we're going to use our longer ones. Screw it into the back of the panel until it's hand tight. And then to secure this part in place, we get the thumb screws just to secure them in. Now that the rods are hand tight, we'll grab the back of the PiFi. And I like to go towards the middle unless other circumstances come up for it. There's other mounting option holes as well. We slide over the back plate. Grab our washers. And then just get the thread started. Now our PiFi is ready to slide over the pole. Get some separation. So like I said, you want to just get to the edge of the threads just to get some clearance. And we're going to slide it over the top of the pole. Now your antenna and your PiFi is set up on the pole, and you want to aim this in the direction where you're going to get the best signal coming from your host network. At this point, you can use your pliers to securely fasten the nuts to put the PiFi and the panel looking in the direction where you want it to stay permanently. And the last thing is you grab your pigtail and connect it to the back of your panel. Now you have completed the outdoor setup, and let's go inside to see what's going on. So now to cover all the details about what's going on inside with your PiFi. Like I mentioned before, the Ethernet cable coming from the signal outside, and for this example, I've set up the PiFi on this pole, and that's going to be our base station. So I've got the cable from the PiFi. I'm going to plug it into the back of the PoE, which is already connected to the router via the Ethernet port for the internet, the blue port. All we're going to do now is, once our power supply is connected to the PoE, is give power to our PoE and give power to our router. And you can see, once we supply power, that we've got an LED light for green showing DC power is reaching the PiFi outside, and there's power to the system overall. Now to set up the PiFi. In order to do this, it's best to use a laptop or a PC, but you can also use a tablet or a smartphone with a web browser. We're going to be wirelessly connecting to this router, which is physically connected to the PiFi right behind me. That PiFi is looking at the base station, which is mimicking your host network. That host network is your office or your home. The PiFi is located at your barn, your metal shed, your second home, your guest house. The PiFi, remember, goes installed at the location where you want to receive internet. Let's get this started. Okay, so setting up this process is fairly simple. First thing you want to do is make sure that everything is powered up and ready to be configured. You want to plug everything into the power and ensure that it's getting powered by seeing 2 green lights on your PoE, and also you'll see solid color lights on your router. The last color, orange, on your router reflects that it does not have internet, and that's okay. We're going to give this router internet, but first we have to configure the router, and then through the router we're going to talk to the PiFi, which can grab the internet from the other location. That sounds complicated, but it's not. We're going to get through this. Also, as a pro tip, you want to let this set up for about 1 to 2 minutes. Once you plug it in, give it some time to boot up before you start trying to configure it, or else you're going to run into dead ends. So step one is let's connect to this router that currently does not have internet. This is the router at the second location where the PiFi is currently installed. So we're going to open up our Wi-Fi settings, and we're going to look for the router's default SSID, which is either one of these two, because this router is a dual band. There's a 2.4 and a 5 gigahertz. So let's just connect to the 2.4, connect, and the router's password is located on the back of the router. In this case, it's 395 48 856. It's going to try to connect, and eventually it's going to tell you no internet but connected. So I can see I'm connected to the router, has no internet, but it is secured. That's fine. Now we go to tplink.wifi.net. Here's where you can set up the access for the router itself, for the back end of the router. We're going to set this up as simple Wi-Fi, all lowercase. Oops, simple Wi-Fi. It's going to ask you to do it one more time. And now I'm logged into the back end of the router, not of the PiFi. We're going to set our time to Eastern. Set to auto detect, dynamic IP. Good to go. Close this out so I can access the next button. Do not clone MAC address. And now we're going to set up the SSID for our network. So the network name that we're going to do is all caps PiFi repeater. And the password is simple Wi-Fi in lowercase. Okay, so this is going to be the signal at the second location. Hit next and save. Now at this step, the router is going to take a second to boot up. Remember, you still do not have internet. During this process, you're going to need to reconnect your computer to the new network that we just created called PiFi repeater. Okay, and here's a reminder, you need to reconnect your wireless device to the new wireless network before clicking the next button. So let's do that. We go to our wireless settings, and here is PiFi repeater, all lowercase simple Wi-Fi. And again, it's going to try to connect to the internet, ultimately realize it does not have internet yet, but we will be connected to that router. At that point, we'll be able to communicate with the PiFi so that I can see PiFi base station. Okay, so we're connected to PiFi repeater, no internet secured. Now we can head over to 192.168.89.1. So if you get this WAN connection error, all you need to do is press "Don't remind me again," and it will allow you to see the PiFi setup page. Okay, so once we've typed in the 192.168.89.1, we've gone past the WAN connection error, we press agree once you agree to the terms and conditions. Now, the PiFi setup page is showing you all the available networks that you can connect to. It's going to show you even the closest network, which is the one we just set up, PiFi repeater. Now, you want to connect to the PiFi base station or the base station of whatever your host network is. So in this case, for us, it's PiFi base station, and our password is simple Wi-Fi. Connect. Through this process, we're going to want to get 3 checks. First one is IP obtained, and then internet. So right now, we have an internet connection coming from the PiFi base station, and we are wirelessly connected to the router that is PiFi repeater. Now again, you do not want to connect the PiFi to the router that is connected to physically, okay? Now, if you have any firmware updates, you want to go ahead and do those as well. But we can see that we can surf the internet here without any issues, okay? Some other things you could do in case there's a power outage or you move this PiFi or you're mobile and you're going from place to place, you can star this network, okay? It's now your favorite. So if you unplug the PiFi and plug it back in, it will automatically look for favorited SSIDs and automatically connect to that. Some other things you can look at are stats. So you want to see a signal to noise ratio. So signal is the signal strength and your noise is red here. You want a signal to noise difference of about 20 decibels. And we got a better one about 25 here. So we're in good shape, okay? So now that you've set up your PiFi, like I mentioned earlier in the video, at the back of this PiFi, you can now connect this to anything with an Ethernet port and get internet directly from the PiFi. So for this example, I'm going to plug it in directly to my Surface, and I'm going to turn off the Wi-Fi, and I'm connected to network 2. As you can see, I'm still seeing the PiFi, okay? And I can browse the internet because I am physically connected to the PiFi. Now this is important. If you ever have any issues with your PiFi and you want to call us to troubleshoot this, the first thing we're going to want to do is physically connect to the PiFi and bypass the router. Most of the hiccups happen with the router, so we want to always be physically connected to C to make sure that the PiFi is not the issue. The lights on the actual physical unit tell you a little bit about what's going on. From top to bottom, you have power, data, and then signal strength. The signal strength that's coming into the antenna is indicative here on the top 4. The one in the middle is blinking to show that we have data, showing that data is transferring back and forth between the base station and the actual PiFi. And a light on the bottom shows that it has power. So if there's ever a troubleshooting issue, we're going to want to ask you, what are the lights on the PiFi saying? What are they doing? And that'll give us some tips or hints on what's going on with your system. Let's talk about the directional antenna. For the best possible signal, you're going to want a direct line of sight between the panel and your base station. And a visual line of sight is most important. You don't want trees, buildings, hills, or anything in the way between the panel antenna and your base station. Now, what we've created here is sort of a lab situation. In the real world, you're going to see gray signals at around -50, -60, and we talk about negative numbers, and that's a whole another conversation for another day. But basically, the closer to 0, the better. That's a stronger signal. So right now in this perfect world scenario, we're doing -17 dB. This directional antenna is 14 dBi with a 32-degree radiation cone. So the strongest point or the strongest reception of this antenna is within 32 degrees left and right of it. In this scenario, we've got the access point or the base station, which is your host network, 5-6 feet away. We're pointing directly at it and we're getting -17. Just as you point away, you can see how the signal drops and gets dramatically worse to -29. We haven't moved the physical locations, we just changed the angle of the antenna. The radiation cone is looking away from this and it's still a gray signal. Remember, this is a lab kind of perfect world scenario. This antenna still gets some good signal just because it has side lobes that radiate on the near field left and right. What that means is the antenna is sort of omni near the antenna. So if I stand close to it, I still get signal, but it's furthest reaching directly in front at 32 degrees. Now, if I point slightly more away to the right, the signal drops all the way to 40. And this is because of the way that the antenna is designed. There's actually signal a little bit in front, obviously a lot in front, a little bit in the back, but there are some dead zones to the left and right back portions of it. And right now, this panel has the back left portion directional to the access point, and that's why the signal is so poor compared to having the panel look directly at the access point, and it goes all the way to -17. So keep that in mind when you're mounting your PiFi. Clear line of sight is going to give you the best result in speed and signal quality and overall best performance. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please press like down below and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more tips and tricks on long-range Wi-Fi. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to contact us at support@simplewifi.com, or you can give us a call to speak with one of our USA-based tech support agents. Thanks.